Sexiest Man Alive. Jonathan Bailey, Sexiest Man Alive.
It was so lovely to chat. Some people are Popeye and some people are olive oil.
And I was olive oil? That minor fourth, and then the way it comes back and it's twice as long. Anyway.
Should we start the conversation?
Well, this is, I don't know what this is.
Should we start?
A lot of cameras.
Oh yeah, that's true. So, Superman.
Who?
Superman.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved the film.
Appreciate it.
And I thought you were really extraordinary in it.
Crypto! What the hey, dude? I thought you destroyed the whole Superman robots. I thought I told you to keep an eye on him.
And I thought that there's so much integrity and specificity in who both Clark and Superman are. But the thing that I really loved is that there was it felt to me like a very honest and true version of integrity and therefore values and therefore cool. Because it was so heroic and the hero was entirely fallible and passionate and I feel like sees the world in a completely different way. The thought processes were it felt to me very sort of scientific.
Oh, love that you said that. That rings very true with me generally in life, the sort of scientific curiosity, exploration, rigor, which does take a certain willingness to not be so cool, to like care very much about details and be willing to kind of look a little bit foolish by trying really hard. James is, I think, that way in life and especially with his movies. He loves making movies, he loves comic books. Even more so than wanting to make them good, he wants to make them fun and special and different.
And he's got a real sense of humor, hasn't he?
Oh, well, yeah.
It's because that was what really struck me within all of it. It felt like it just felt like there was so many vibrant ideas. Like you were invited in someone's dream state.
Yeah.
And that's what is so exciting because
that's why you want to go to the movies, is to like see a dream on the screen.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's cool to have a director who leads with that.
Yeah.
And has great respect and wants to deliver something to an audience, but wants to deliver something that is unique to them, to themselves as a visionary.
Yeah, and how they interpret the world. I think.
It was really cool working like that because he also casts people who think that way and are excited about their craft and their art in that way. As an actor, there is just a desire to be more involved because you are the last person to find anything out most of the time.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of situations I feel where there's a culture of protecting actors from too much information, which I think can hamstring them sometimes, hamstring us. I often get frustrated feeling like I want to contribute in this moment when we're shooting the scene, but I don't know why we're shooting it in this room.
Well, there's an amazing footage of you and James having an extraordinary conversation.
Is this not the moment where I go, I was wrong to feel that way?
That's exactly where the issue is, right? Because what he didn't tell you was it was wrong to feel that way.
I always think there should be, God, this is such a nerd thing to say, but like, I always think there should be tension, but not friction. Generally, like everywhere, in a creative process. And I felt like that was such a good example of tension, as in where there were two people who as in I thought it was a brilliant moment and it was actually kind of vulnerable. It's a bit like when you're rehearsing a play and the idea of like a play rehearsal being broadcast live would be, because you have to be able to make those mistakes.
Fucking let's do it. I think I love that tension without friction is good because friction creates unnecessary heat, but tension is how you get
and it's not
done.
economic. You hemorrhage energy with friction, whereas tension holds the energy. There was something about the conversation that you had, and then you just went, yeah.
You have to be vulnerable, which means showing Lex that your feelings are hurt. In the point when you really shouldn't.
I feel so lucky that is on film because you have moments like that just aren't captured.
Yeah.
And it was interesting hearing from people what they thought of it. A range of everything from like, well, that's what always happens. That's the process. That's just, what happens, all the way to like, what a terrible working environment.
Oh.
And it's interesting thinking like in a workplace, that kind of conversation might might not be appropriate to even raise your voice in that way.
I see. Yeah.
But
for me, I was like, that's the most exciting.
That for me too, and for me, it does happen all the time. I have not. I don't think I haven't worked with that many directors, with that many people. It was amazing how indefatigable James was. He very rarely got fed up with me because I think he knew that the reason I'm having those conversations with him is at my boldest, it's because I think I might see something that he doesn't see and he might value. And if I let him see it, then he'll go, ah, yes, that's what I want.
Yep.
I never want any director to say, fine, if you need that, go do it. Because I'm not doing it just for me. Sometimes you need that, but like mostly it's like I might see something here that you actually like once you see it.
Yeah.
And then you'll feel like it's yours.
Yeah.
But on the other end of it is, I don't know how to do a good job otherwise. I got this criticism in theater school quite a lot of like, you need to know before you do. You need a reason to do what you're doing. You need to know how it's going to work out before you do it.
Oh.
And that was a good lesson to learn. You know, I think as an actor, you do need to let go.
Do you mean make choices, or do you?
Well, it was described to me as leaping off a cliff, as just
Yeah.
acting before you're ready is another phrase that,
see.
you know, you're doing a scene. As a young actor, you're sort of waiting to feel ready to make the action, to
I see
start
what you
yelling,
mean.
to
Yes.
cross.
Yeah.
And there's
In a way, I heard. Yes, I know exactly what you mean.
there's a
Yeah.
practice of just walk before you're ready to walk. Just say
go.
the line
Yeah.
before you're ready to say the line. Because
That's what we do as humans, isn't it?
Well, sometimes, but I think we do it at our most interesting, and that's the most important thing. Is as actors, you don't want to just be human. You want to be humans at their most interesting, dynamic, dramatic moments. Otherwise, you know, it's drama is life with all the boring bits cut out.
Yeah.
Wicked for Good is fucking fantastic. I got to see it early.
You know who could. We both know who could and who has. And I have to find her, because if someone else gets there first,
I'm worried for her too.
You fly in this movie.
We both kiss levitating.
Yes, but let me tell you this, because you have the bigger challenge. You are carried by Cynthia. She's levitating you.
That's right. Yeah.
I have never. Every man out there would think there's no way you can look masculine and powerful and in control when you're being levitated by a woman. And you,
My greatest privilege.
you somehow in that moment when she's lifting you by your arms, I think, or like of your fucking massive arms, you somehow maintained your masculinity and your I don't know, it was amazing that moment when she flies you in that song, which is one of my favorite songs in the musical.
Yeah, me too, actually.
That minor fourth, and then the way it comes back and it's twice as long. Anyway, I listened to it on repeat in the car ride yesterday. Well done, mate, because it's a lot easier when you get to carry the girl, and when you're being carried, not easy.
Oh my God! I mean, it was like total honor, and also, I mean, listen, I'll be carried by both Cynthia and Ari for the rest of my life if I could be. You know, what a treat to be able to, you know, just to come and do my bit, but also to share a moment like that, and like even technically to be in a harness and opposite her while singing. It's just, you know, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And to see Elphaba's, you know, powers, you know, used for, as in her expression of rage in the first film, and then having this blissful moment of love and what that does.
For the first
But I did
time,
see Superman, I was like,
I feel wicked.
oh shit. So I saw your kiss at the end, which, by the way, there's my favourite moment of chemistry above all of it is the chuckle.
You know, I think, and James might correct me when we go to shoot the sequel, I was doing that chuckle, I was laughing.
Yeah.
In that moment at the end when she says, I love you too.
Yeah.
And he came up to me and said, it's not working. It needs to be
Tension.
solemn, it needs to be.
Tension, not friction.
And I was like, no, the whole point is, I fucking
I
know
thought
that
it
you
was
love me.
so brilliant.
So-
Because it was just so...
Credit to James if I'm right.
Yeah.
He was right on 90% of everything, but on that one, he saw that that chuckle was a
I
very
loved it.
truthful thing.
I also think that there's a performed sense of like male romance, which is that it's held.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not.
Nah.
And actually, it's the giddiness and the playfulness that comes from a secure, you know, when you finally
Yeah.
know that you're there, which just makes your heart sing. And when you're in this huge film like Superman, the fact that you grounded it in those moments, obviously working with Rachel and Nick Cole is brilliant.
Ah, the best.
That is what makes a leading man smash it out of the park.
Ugh.
So when you get the call for Superman, presumably no one's ever mentioned that to you before in your life, because that was a wild, you know, casting against type. Must have been crazy.
Well, when I got the audition, I was standing on a ladder changing a light fixture.
Saving the world.
Yeah. Saving this light fixture. And my agent, there was a lot of people on the call, which is usually either really good news or really bad news. And my agent said, we think you know what this is about.
Oh gosh.
And I said, what is it?
That gives me chills.
Is it Top Gun 3? What am I waiting for? So I really was not expecting it, although I think other people thought that I should be expecting it.
I feel like that's an exact memory of when I've been told off growing up.
Really?
I think you know what this is about.
Yes, well, exactly. You're sort of like,
what have I done?
If I don't know, I feel like I've done something wrong that I
Totally.
forgot about.
Something so wrong, but it's so right that you're now going to play Superman.
Yeah, but it's all very impossible. I mean, just statistically speaking, not to mention experientially, it feels completely impossible. Do you have that feeling?
Yes.
Generally, like in
I've been plugged into some sort of matrix.
yeah.
Yes.
And it persists.
I
Yes,
feel like I've been slowly working on the hardware over the years, but the software has just been accidentally upgraded.
right.
Tenfold in a sort of a crazy sort of exponential curve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the software referring to like you're still you inside there, and so like the external things have changed, but at some point you're.
Well,
or
in
what
fact, maybe I mean that the hardware, the software's catching up, maybe. Although the hardware is something that you physically can hone.
What's the hardware in this analogy?
Okay, well, my original thought was that the hardware is literally your body,
Yeah.
and your skill set,
Right,
and your craft.
which is developing no matter what job you're working on, no matter you're growing, you're building it, you're.
Totally. Give me a workshop reading in the Cut, which is in Southwark in London for the National Theatre, for a play that may or may not get put on. And, I've applied the same process to that than I would do for, prepping for this conversation.
Yeah, of which we did a lot.
We did,
obviously.
I know. Because we've got things in common, haven't we?
Yeah, well, theater's one of them.
And from a young age.
Yes, yeah.
How old were you when you started?
I was 9 when I did my first professional play in Philadelphia.
That's incredible. Is it the Arden Theatre?
The Arden Theatre, yes.
So describe the theatre to me. What is? Is it got one? Oh yeah.
It's got two.
Can you smell it?
No, that's not one of the. Not that smell doesn't do that to me, but
It's famously a smelly thing.
I don't generally
Stunk.
remember smells. I feel like when I get hit with a scent, I can place it.
As a memory sense.
But what I remember is I was 9. I played Bert in All My Sons, a great play by Arthur Miller.
Yeah, of course.
It's about 9 characters, all in the backyard of a house in the
Bert is the
next door neighbor, the kid
yes,
next door.
Yes, yep.
Who gets to play policeman.
God, what a
with-
great part.
Yeah. So I had 2 scenes in the first act where I just come on, I have some fun with the main actor, and then I fuck off before intermission to go home to bed so I can wake up for school the next morning.
Yeah.
But all my memories of the theater are from sitting in the audience watching rehearsals or watching the run after my scenes were done, and also very distinct memories of standing backstage in the dark at the end of the play. It's quite a sad ending to the play, and one of the actresses, the adult actresses, with her hands on my shoulders when the gunshot goes off at the end of the play, and she would squeeze my shoulders. And I always sort of thought, I'm not sad. I was a 9-year-old kid. I was so happy to be there.
Yeah.
At some point, my dad explained to me, I think she's not trying to comfort you. I think she's trying to
Comfort
herself. And I remember running out for my curtain call. I was the first one to run out to take my bow after this terribly heartbreaking ending to the play. And I remember as the lights came up, seeing the faces of the audience members sort of light up with relief at seeing this, 9-year-old boy running out, all happy, carefree after this sad ending. And that was when it struck me of the immediate effect that theater and
the crackle of energy and how it can change.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and the in-person stuff, because I've got, film stuff was all to come later.
Yeah.
I loved films, but doing it all came later. But that in-person immediate impact was quite intoxicating for a 9-year-old kid.
And because that's the extraordinary thing, for anyone to experience that, but at such a formative age.
Yeah.
Did you miss any school?
Yeah, I got to miss. I did. I was homeschooled for 3 months while I did a production that had student matinees on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Right.
So I got to stay
at
home, and
yeah.
my dad homeschooled me.
And do you ever think about what that experience, how that sort of maybe shifted or enhanced or compounded your experience as an adult?
I think it was.
Even in life.
Yeah, well, it was the juxtaposition between that and school, because I liked school and I like academics, but there was something that always didn't quite make sense about school. I didn't understand why. Ultimately, it all felt like, well, because next year, and then you want to get into a good school, and it all
you sort of don't. You see a system that doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, and it all sort of fades off in the distance. You don't see. Well, I'm never going to be 20. That's not a real age. And with the theater, it was that immediate, no, you need to learn your lines, you need to go to rehearsals, because in 3 weeks there's going to be a paying audience.
Yes. Yeah.
And if you don't know your lines,
Yeah.
you can imagine how that's going to feel in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Which is actually something that I try to get back to, the sense that it wasn't for some other reason, it was just for that. It wasn't to get the next part, it wasn't to...
No, it's to experience that process and to be there and live in it,
Yeah.
and to maximize, I suppose, the experience with the people around you. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for its own sake, to an extent, which
Yeah.
I think is well, I don't know, you tell me, something that you strive for. Again, is it easy to get caught up in the, like, well, maybe if I do a good job in this project, I'll get another project that'll make me happy, or that'll, be bigger or better or more what I want to do, or are you pretty good about just...
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always been. I think it's really evolved. That's the software. When the software
yes,
comes
good,
in.
back, all coming back, prepped.
Because I think, I think the formative, because I did 3 plays at the Royal Shakespeare Company by the time I was 13.
All
And,
Shakespeare?
They weren't actually. Yes, the third one was Shakespeare, King John. I played Prince Arthur, a lesser-known history play. Prince Arthur gets kidnapped, held hostage in a tower, and his adoring keeper is told to poke his eyes out with a hot poker. He manages to persuade him not to by begging, and escapes, climbing out of a window through a wall, and then falls off the wall and breaks his neck.
Amazing.
So I did that twice a day on a Thursday and a Saturday.
Fantastic.
Yeah, before puberty.
Yeah, I mean, that's every 11, that's what you're pretending to do in your backyard or in your
Totally.
basement, and then you actually get to do it on stage.
Totally. And also, I remember the rigorous, because it was Shakespeare, the academic process, the muscular response that you had to have to a tutor who was like, you need to, and I don't know if you remember the resonant voices of the actors. That I just remember at a young age, there's an amazing actress called Helen McCrory. Sadly, she passed away in the UK. She's incredible, and you would have seen her in amazing things. She's in Peaky Blinders, amongst many things. And her voice, like, I just remember as an animal, like the animal response. Well, you're a father, aren't you?
Yeah.
You know how when people say about when their baby cry, they can hear their baby out of 50. It was like that sort of, visceral response, knowing then that was what was capable, and hearing someone telling a story on, every single day, and honing, understanding that imperfection exists, but clarity and truth can still remain throughout it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Did you have an ear for the language? Like, did you would listen to the play every night?
Yeah, well, this one in particular was a ill-fated production of Les Enfants du Paradis, directed by Simon Callow, who actually I recently heard on a podcast saying that he identified it as one of his biggest failures.
When you say ill-fated, you mean like it
It was
wasn't
so
received well?
on press night. It was the biggest production. It was Les Enfants du Paradis is a big, a famous film actually as well.
Obviously not famous enough. If I've
That's
never heard
true.
of it.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
please,
It hasn't passed the Corenswet test, so it can't be anything. And on press night, I said the Scottish play. I said Macbeth. Well, we're not in the theatre, so I can say it. I said Macbeth.
So it was all your fault.
And so I had this chaperone called Muriel.
Did they take you outside?
She told me it was me.
Yeah.
So at the age of 8, I thought I single-handedly brought down the Royal Shakespeare
That's
Company.
amazing.
And one of the
you've
wheels.
been trying to make up for it ever since.
Ever since.
Wow. I remember
never felt like.
It was in All My Sons that they were teaching me about the Scottish play.
Yeah.
And in doing that, I said Macbeth, and
They send you out the room.
they sent me out of the theater. They sent me out the stage door into an alleyway in
And you have to knock on the
Old
door.
Philadelphia. You got to say a line, spin 3 times, spit, and then
Swear.
knock to get back in.
Do you have to say a swear word?
I think I forget. It was
Still calling it a
yes,
swear
it was
word.
a swear word. Yes.
Did you have to say a swear word?
Yes. Did you have to say a naughty word?
Can I also just say, though, that with that in mind and about theatre, is that I think there was so much on the screen that I found, I think the performances in Superman are so brilliant. And I think it is all down to detail and a very specific interpretation that I think, obviously, James Gunn has got this incredible brain that he can communicate to people.
Would you like a coffee?
Where's the dog?
Dog?
The dog, Luther! You took the dog!
That's right, you get all of this.
It was the long scenes that he gave you and
Yeah.
Rachel. How long is that scene in the kitchen?
10 minutes.
Oh my, it was what a thrill.
Yeah.
And that scene, and also between you two when the aliens are, and forgive my terminology, but there is such a beautiful mise en scène
Yeah.
with your, in the window, and you're having this, again, you return to this intimacy, but they play out like theatre scenes.
And we rehearsed them like theater. That was
Yeah,
the
that's my
moment
question.
when I realized that I had not done a deal with the devil in taking this big role, but I was actually sort of returning home.
Yeah.
Because we rehearsed those scenes like a
Well,
play.
and you can see that you're both listening and just so locked in. and the chemistry, therefore. I mean, my question is, what do you think chemistry is? Because people talk about it. Because I think you and Rachel have got it in spades.
Well, I think the reason that it's referred to as chemistry is because there's this element of not knowing quite what it is. It's
elemental
alchemical.
then. Yeah.
Ultimately, I think it's, do you believe that these people are into each other? Whether it's a romantic scene or, you know, Redford and Newman had great chemistry on screen.
Yeah.
It's a question of, are these people really in the room with each other?
Yeah.
And it's little things that I think you work on a lot in theater that maybe you don't work on so much on film, although great actors obviously make it happen and great directors bring it out of great actors, which is, if I move a little closer to you, does that affect you? And it's very easy on film to not allow that to happen because of the constraints, even just the physical constraints of where the camera is and where your marks are and where the light is. And it's one of the reasons having a director who appreciates actors and their processes, whether they elevate those beyond everything else or whether they just realize that it's an important part. It's both more satisfying to work on, but I also think does show up on screen.
I agree.
Let's talk about the movie that's coming out, or that has come out. Wicked for Good.
Wicked for
Part
Good.
2, because I do have, there's some interesting parallels here too. Just as far as the vision, the storytelling,
But then also the precision of which you've just talked of that thing of, someone once said, a poet once said, only within a cage do you find freedom.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like John Chu managed to somehow communicate to a whole cast and crew across a 3, 4, 5 year process to allow all of them to unlock or to be aware of the parameters they're given, and especially for, say, Fierro in the film, having seen the musical in the theatre, I was so aware of the leanness and the small moments that had to then become, you had to sort of mine and use the parameters and sort of flourish within it. And he was someone who, I think probably like James, could see it all in his head and then just would know how to invite the right people, I think, who, whether or not, you know, they had something to say.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's...
It's interesting. You would think that those are antithetical. A director who sees it all laid out in front of them. James storyboards every shot of the movie. I'm sure, I mean, with a musical like that, you've got to have the choreography, the blocking. It's so complicated. You've got to have a very clear vision. But then to invite people in, not to fit your vision, but to contribute in a real way, that's much harder. And I think to John and James's credit, it's a better director who can do both those things.
I agree.
Have a very clear vision and make space for great
it's genial, I think. And I met John Chu before, obviously being officially invited in, and we had a sort of what was supposed to be a half an hour hello, and it went on for about 3 hours. He, frame by frame, talked me through the opening of the first film, and it was about, I mean, it was 2.5 years before the film came out, and about 8 months before we even started shooting, I think. Yeah, and it was exactly as he sat in front of me, and he's like, Johnny, I think it's okay. So the thing about that you know about Elphaba, I think it's about nature, and I think she's got this. And I was just like, I can totally see, without, it was just such a generous act. And he was like, I've drawn this, and anyway, it was just, I knew at that point, again, maybe similar to when you met James, that I just knew it was going to be something extraordinary. And if it's the ability to invite the right people in. And actually to go, okay, Chris Scott, the choreographer, yes, I need it to be this sort of number, but you go off and you do that, because you can't micromanage these huge movies like this. I think.
No, I think it's with a big musical production like Wicked. I think it's harder for people to take for granted just how much goes into it. But even then, unless you've spent, I mean, a lot of people have never spent a single day on a film set. You spend a single day and you realize how many moving parts there are.
I know.
And then to think back that this day got planned 8 months ago.
Yeah.
Before we knew XYZ, but all these things have come up since. And then to know that you've planned 90 or 100 or 120 of those days. And that's all just to get the footage to make them
to tell the story.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing. So you also shot 2 films back to back.
At the same time.
So when you say at the same time, were you block shooting? Were you shooting scenes?
There was no block shooting. It was all so. Yes, you would start on a Monday and a Tuesday, and you'd be shooting Dr. Dillerman's classroom in the first film, and then on the Wednesday it would be the preamble to For Good, the duet at the end of the second film, and then Jeff would be in, and we'd be shooting The Wizard at the second. And
Wow.
it's testament to the extraordinary women playing those two roles, because also they were so locked in with John, and I knew quite quickly, in the best possible way, that it was almost like I was trusted. And there's nothing better than that.
It's great, especially when you're coming in playing a supporting role, where you sort of know that your job is to, obviously you need to balance making your contribution and advocating for your role, but mostly you don't want to fuck up the process that's already going on.
Just don't want to
amazing,
Yeah, just bring energy and precision and do the work behind closed doors, and then come up and surprise. And I think, but that's also, Cynthia and Ari and Jeff and Michelle and Marissa and everyone applied themselves in such a way that, and there's so much that happens before you even get on set. I was working with Eric Vitro on my singing voice and Chris Scott.
So you've sung before. Forgive me if you've talked about this at length with the first movie, but I'm very curious. So you sang, you were in Les Mis when you were...
Yes, I was. I played Gavroche, and and I was in the last 5 years. And
Yes.
Company. I've done musicals before, so I've done 8 shows a week.
So,
singing.
As an actor who I sang in like my summer theater program and did my high school musicals, but
what did you play?
I was in my senior musical. I was Seymour in Little Shop of Horrors.
Brilliant.
So much fun.
Yeah.
And then in the summer theater program, which was more, that was a very a more competitive situation. I got to be in West Side Story, but I was a jet, so I sang in the chorus. But
if you get to sing the overture and dance,
yeah.
The
so
overture,
I was one of the first ones to come out in the overture.
Did you whistle?
Yeah, I was one of the whistlers. I got to climb a fence. That's the greatest show
Woof.
to. Fantastic. And then
Just
got
be cool.
to sing and
Just
dance
be
and
cool,
Cool
boy.
and Officer Krupke and everything.
Oh, well, I can't wait until you do your musical again. What are you going to do?
Oh well, see, this is the thing. I don't know. I don't know if I was never up with the real competitors. I was always a tier below. I am musical. I appreciate music. I can carry a tune quite well. I never really trained my voice.
But how exciting that you're yet to have that. But then again,
Well, so my question to you is, for somebody who did sing as a young actor and took on big singing roles and had your singing roles, critically acclaimed, was this your first singing role in a film?
Yes. Yeah.
So for this situation, what is your singing prep like? Are you working with a singing teacher who you know?
Well, I feel like I've just been, all of the things that are so lucky. I mean, obviously, you work as hard as you can and you get these amazing opportunities. But the thing about being in a film like this is that you get these extraordinary experts who just are there just to go, right, check in with me and I can gift you technique and time. We've actually trained with the same physical trainer, Paolo.
Oh, Paolo, I forgot we have Paolo in common.
Yes, we do.
Love you, Paolo.
But also that's an example, right? So if you think about your, forgive me, I assume you didn't, your body wasn't, was it maybe you were born a superhero?
No. I was 190 pounds soaking wet which sounds like a lot,
soaking
but
wet.
that just means if you're trying really hard. Like if you
okay.
wet your clothes, that's the most.
That's going to put on a lot of weight if you got wet clothes.
Yeah. But I was what my high school, one of my high school crushes, very unaffectionately described as a string bean. I was a string bean growing up, very tall and very skinny.
Some people are Popeye and some people are olive oil.
Yeah, and I was olive oil.
Well, you've graduated. Well,
yes. Anyway, so yeah, I put on 40 pounds with Paolo.
But that's incredible.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
but also the process there, if you apply that to vocal training, it's extraordinary. For me, it's about confidence, I think, as well. And also with this, your cast and, with Cynthia and Ari.
Yeah, I mean,
and
no
singing
joke.
live on set while singing. And, those 8 days of doing Dancing Through Life were some of the most extraordinary and the toughest days I've had on a film set. John Chu had a baby on the Monday that we were doing, the wheel.
Yes. Yeah.
And so we did one day without a director. But these things, you have to train that hard so that there will be variables on the day. You might not sleep.
Yeah.
You might have a cold. The director might have a baby. And so you train that hard. It's so satisfying. And it's so focusing, isn't it, as well? Like to be able to really commit full.
And to have such a good reason to put so much into it. That was the thing I had always wanted to put on weight, and I would love to take singing lessons for 6 months.
Yeah.
But there's nothing, you can't say enough about having such a good reason to put that kind of work in, because when you're starting from, when you're not Cynthia Erivo or Ariana Grande, you feel like you might have a long way to go, and the first couple months maybe you don't sound so good or you're not putting on so much weight.
Trust the process.
Trusting the process and having those.
I was going to say something earlier as well, which is, I think, similar to Superman and Wicked, is that don't rest on, not you personally, but generally, one shouldn't assume that just because, you know, with you just said about Cynthia and Ari, both of them, like talent. It's so easy with superhero films, I think, and the performances within them and the directors of those films, and also the performers of musicals, to just go, God, they're just so talented.
Yeah.
It's a God-given gift.
Yeah.
It's absolutely, yes, of course there's that, but there's years of honing craft. And of course,
and they still have to warm up in the morning and like,
totally.
yeah.
And you know, Ari changed her whole tone and her voice, and Cynthia was training so that she could deliver that every single take. And of course, if it looks like it's something that you were born to do, then you've done the work so well.
Well, part of it is making it look easy.
Easy, yeah.
Couldn't be happier, right here, look what we've got, a fairy tale plot, our very own happy ending.
It's incredible when you spend how many years, it must have been 2 years, that you stepped into Superman's costume, and how long it took to make from being cast to it being released into the world.
2 years, yeah.
2 years. There was such a resonance to the film. There's one thing about creating this extraordinary movie that gets people into the cinemas, because it was a really exciting time, wasn't it? Because you were doing your press tour, and Jurassic press tour was happening, and Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
And it's incredible when there's this alignment. And there's something about the values of Superman and this version of Superman that felt so alive and connected to the audience.
Get out of here!
Did you feel that?
There's so many different measures of that.
Yeah.
There's like, you get, how do the cast and crew feel about the film? How does the director feel about the film? The first people who start to, you know, the publicists who get to watch it, the agents and managers who get to watch it ahead of the release, the press people who start asking you questions a month before the film is released, and they start saying like, I've seen the movie, and you're like, oh my gosh, what did you think?
Yeah.
And then there's this slow build to a tidal wave. But even the tidal wave is, you've got sort of the screenings that you do that are often, you know, diehard fans, people who really want to love it or have extremely high expectations and are easy to disappoint. And then you have the critical reception and people who are writing about it and who want to talk about the zeitgeist and how it fits into especially with films that have a legacy like Jurassic Park or Superman. It's sort of easy to get pulled in one direction. And then you have the box office, which is at very least just a measure of how many people buy tickets or how many people buy multiple tickets to go see the movie. So it's sort of, you can tell a bunch of different stories depending on what you focus on.
It's a lot of noise, isn't it?
Yeah.
For you, and you know, because there's only so much you have control over, which we've talked about the process.
Yes,
and the making of it and the enjoying the.
The thing that I learned for sure, for definite, is that I leave my feeling of my sense of control at wrap.
Yes.
When I leave set, I have done my work. That is the. I guess to a certain extent, promoting the film is part of your work as well.
Yeah.
But as far as the film itself goes, and whether people like people can love the press tour and not love the film.
Yeah.
If people like the film, my contribution happened a year ago when I was on set. And so the only way I can really measure my success as an actor is by the people who it's that thing of running out for my curtain call and seeing the audience's face light up. That's the feedback that tells you whether you're on track or not. So if my scene partner gets what they need from me on the day, and if James says, or you know, if my director says, yep, that was good, we've got it. And then sometimes even more importantly than that, if the crew is happy to see me, you know, if I'm not called for a few days and I show up on my next day and they're like, oh, we missed you. Like, it's not quite the same when you're not
It'd be
here.
awful if you play Superman and you got to set and everyone's like, oh.
Yeah, well, but it does happen crazily. But I like to put my energy there. Yeah. And I put a lot of energy there. I work very hard to, especially
it comes through on screen.
Well, good. Yeah. I mean, I don't pretend to know how that happens, because there is so much that happens between your performance and showing up on screen. and like only one of them is the edit, which is literally cutting the timing or cutting lines, or even things like color correction and sound design. I mean, one of the things I love about a musical, and I love about Wicked, which is a musical that I listened to first and then saw on stage,
Yeah.
and then a film adaptation is like the place where it can all go off the rails, in my opinion. And to see such a beautiful, elevated, like a next step in the legacy of this great musical, starting from the book, is so satisfying, mainly for me because I think musicals are in some ways the ultimate film expression.
I've got another thing we've got in common.
What's
so
that?
you used to create videos with your best mate.
Yeah.
And I am so lucky because I am just that little bit older than you that we didn't have. I don't think YouTube was even there because we've got so many videos. I'm saying that. I think because our videos would have been.
Oh no, I'm very proud of those videos.
No,
I
you
have
should
no
be.
shame about them.
You should
yeah.
be. My videos that I made with my friend were wild, and we spent hours and hours making films in the garden and editing. And I'd absolutely hyper focus and would go. Should be doing 99 other things, but I'd come out with a video aged 13 about a guy who's lost his wife and decides to kill himself.
You're doing heavy stuff there. I was doing
Really
light
heavy.
sketch comedy.
Yeah, I know, exactly. But it's also what I found very clear to me is that I think you've probably got really good long-standing friendships.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And have been been creatively collaborating with people that you know and trust in a very small scale, I feel like you'll probably one day write and direct.
Yeah, probably when I find the right thing to take up that much time, because it is a much bigger commitment than as an actor. But yeah, do you have any interest in writing and directing? I mean, any interest? Do you feel that is in your future imminently, or something that might?
I'm in reverence to every person on set and every moment of the process of making a film. And I just think, what actors come on set for 15% of the whole process. Do I love being on set? Yes, 100%. And I love the working singularly on one project. And so it would be a great honor to be working with something from the original concept idea all the way through.
Is this your humble way of saying yes?
I'm just saying.
Tell me about Jurassic. Was Jurassic sort of I feel like I might have seen or read something that you were very excited about that. Was that something of like a dream to get to?
Well, but that's probably where we have a real crossover with playing Superman.
I don't know actually.
Okay.
Because I'm on record as like, if I was a Jedi, that would have
be the thing.
That was my growing up thing. I was not a Superman guy growing up.
Okay.
Which is not to say I didn't have the greatest time ever making the movie and getting to wear the cape and everything, but Jurassic, you were like, dinosaurs.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it was just an absolute, I mean, it's amazing, isn't it, to, when we were saying about, when you're at school and you think, I'm not going to turn 20, like, that's just not going to happen, and there's such a sort of like an immediacy, almost solipsism to like being young and being like, I'm probably never going to, in fact, I only realised about 10 years ago that my dad also shared with me, I just sort of felt like I probably wasn't going to I was never going to make it. Wasn't sort of Peter Pan. I just couldn't. I can't look ahead.
Like this sort of like I'm going to die young thing, or just you can't.
Like maybe
my grandfather and my father had that too. They were like, I probably won't live another 10 years.
It's a very sort of because me and my dad sort of really connected over that, realizing that we both have he was a DJ and his I don't know what I'm trying to say. I think I never really thought. I just felt like. Going from, it was a jobbing actor in my 20s and there was a lot of rejection. You look back now, this is what I'm getting at. This is what I'm getting at, is that I saw Wicked for Good in London with my family, and I saw Jurassic World Rebirth, and I was sat there watching it. And in these moments, I now can look back and get incredibly emotional because I never did look forward in that way. And I never really did see myself in those roles for so many reasons, as we all do. But when, the idea of being invited into Jurassic, and then you go, and then you're like working with Gareth Edwards and Mahershala and Rupert and obviously Scarlett, who I've grown up watching her films, and everyone is united in this complete feverish moment of going to the cinema to see that first movie and to see the whole franchise grow. And it was like amazing to be sharing such a united passion that was giddying. And
in some ways it's like doing a great Shakespeare play. It's like a play
Yes.
that has been done before by great actors,
that's-
and it has this legacy.
Yes, that's true. Well, more so with Superman. I did Richard II at the beginning of the year, and I remember there was one night where 3 previous Richard II's came.
Amazing.
And it was like
You had the Spider-Man
Ray
meme.
Fiennes.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. Literally, yes. And yeah, with Superman. I mean, have you been in contact with? I mean,
I got to write Tyler Hoechlin, who played him on the TV
yeah.
show that just ended, and I exchanged letters with Henry Cavill.
Who was
Don't
yours?
let me mess this up. I don't think I've met any of the.
Tom Welling.
Tom Welling was mine. I watched Smallville growing up.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Oh, so one thing we have in common, which is funny, is we both got to the thing that made me emotional, because I love a film score, and getting to be in a film that has an orchestral score is kind of a rarity these days.
Yeah.
But we both got to have John Williams music at our back. And that, for me, that was the moment when I got emotional, because the music was so much when I was growing up watching Star Wars and watching Jurassic Park and Indiana Jones and everything. Realizing that all the music was this one guy, that was the sort of thing where I was like, well, if I could ever be in a movie with some John Williams music, and that I definitely didn't think would happen. And that's where I get emotional.
Where that is our sweet spot.
In watching Superman, when the trailer came out and that music was behind
And also
it.
the theme is used so well in your film.
Yeah.
Towards the end, it comes like every sort of 92 seconds in different keys, and it's so gratifying.
Yeah.
But yeah, what a time to be alive.
Let me ask you this. Sexiest Man Alive. Jonathan
Okay,
Bailey,
and
Sexiest
it was
Man
so
Alive.
lovely to chat.
Where do you go
It
from
was
here?
Sexiest Man Alive 2026.
How do you do it?
How dare you? That is that's software, not hardware. Okay.
Back tomorrow for part 2?
Yeah. Maybe we'll just sit down in another 10. Should we just check up on each other every 10 years?
That's a good
That
idea.
would be a real
that's-
privilege.
at some point there's no alternative. You can't
I know.
actually be friends with all the lovely people there are in the industry and in the world. You just have some people.
I'll be your friend.
Well, great. Do you have time for me? I feel like you've got.
Yeah, I do actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I haven't got time for you. I've got a 2-year-old at home.
Blimey,
but
yeah.
I'll talk to you in 10 years.
Okay, great.
So how do you top Sexiest Man Alive? No, I'm kidding.
Ugliest. No,
Good. Should we kiss or something?
just make out.
What a pleasure. Oh, real pleasure.
It really got going as well.
Yeah.
Talk about that exponential curve.
yeah.